So you wake up every morning with a plan until the day that everything changes. And for some, it's a sudden injury. For others, it's a transition that leaves them feeling lost. But imagine dedicating your entire life to a mission only to have it ripped away in an instant. And that's exactly what happened to today's guest. Marine Corps veteran Davey Lind was on his fifth combat deployment when an IED explosion took both of his legs. And in that moment, everything could have ended. But instead of accepting defeat, he set a goal to walk again, to rebuild, and to come back stronger than ever. Today, Davey is the first ever double amputee CrossFit trainer, proving that resilience isn't about what you've lost, it's about what you refuse to let go of. And in this episode, we are going to talk about his story of recovery, the mental battles that he fought, and how fitness, purpose, and community helped him redefine his future. And before we get into it, if you're looking for more stories of resilience and real-world advice for veterans, join our mailing list at driveonpodcast.com/subscribe. And you'll get my 5 favorite episodes delivered straight to your inbox, stories that inspire, motivate, and help you take action in your own life. After you do that, we're going to jump right into this conversation with Davey Lind. Davey, welcome to the show. I'm really glad to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So let's begin with what I'd imagine was probably the most challenging moment in your life, getting struck by an IED. We talked about that just a second ago in the intro there, and losing your legs. Describe what that moment felt like, what emotions associated with it. What was going through your head at that point?
The hardest part to describe about that, that fateful night, June 14th, 2007, the hardest part to describe for me or to put in context for people is, as you said, it was my 5th combat tour. And I've been in combat situations, close, medium, and far, for my entire career, from Desert Shield on all the way up till I was injured. And one of the things that happens, any leaders in the room listening, you get to a point, you start off your career where you just want to see the action. You just want to get into it. That's literally, kind of what it is, and you are ignorant to the cost of combat, the risk of your life, because your perspective is different. It's very masculine. That's just what you want to do. And then life goes on, the military career goes on, and then you transition from taking care of yourself to taking care of a team, in my case, and then taking care of a platoon. And by the time you get to being a platoon sergeant where I was at, now what you're caring about is the individuals under your charge. You're caring less about your personal safety. You're caring less about getting into the action. You want to do your job. You want to be aggressive in the nature of how you do your job. You want to be tactically and technically sound and proficient, but you also want to make sure you bring everybody back. So at that point in time when I was injured, I was a platoon sergeant of a recon platoon. I'd been in combat. I'd accomplished a lot. I thought at that point in time that I would either live or die in combat, but I never foresaw myself being seriously injured. The perspective of what you can and can't tolerate from combat injuries, everybody has that preconceived notion. And for me, I never imagined myself being an amputee. I thought life would be over when that happened. And so one of the unique aspects of my injuries is I was never knocked unconscious from the blast. So immediately aware of missing my right leg at that kind of oh damn moment, and got myself out of the vehicle. I was in an up armor Humvee. Blast went off directly underneath me. Was able to wedge myself out from the bulletproof glass and my, the compromised nature of my vehicle, and got out of the vehicle. And only when trying to slide away from the vehicle using my left leg to push away did I become aware that I was missing my left leg. So here I am. I'm 36 years old, platoon sergeant of a recon platoon, king of a small island. In the real world, I have, a wife, kids, I own stuff, I do things, and now I'm an amputee. And in that immediate moment, the various first things that happened to me was, I will honestly tell you, I honestly considered ending my own life. There on the battlefield, thinking there is no way I'm living with this through this, and in that context, I also immediately realized how selfish and how silly that was. That I had so much more to do, and I pushed all that aside, and I will say, not tongue in cheek, but as honest as I can, I had a conversation with a higher power and said, if this is the path you have for me to walk, I'm going to walk this path to the best of my ability. And that was at about 23:30, June 14th, local time and date in Al Anbar, Iraq, June 14th, 2007. And I've been on that path in one way, shape, or form, with enthusiasm, sometimes greater than others, but since that time. So
that's kind of what pushed you to start walking again, right? I mean, because you said I'm going to walk this path, right? And I don't think that was a figurative way of saying things. I think what you're trying to say is you're literally going to walk this path. And
well, at that time, not to cut you off, but
yeah,
at that time, I was a gunnery sergeant in the Marine Corps. In the Marine Corps, for listeners, anybody out there, when you get selected for your next track. So I was a gunnery sergeant at E7, and I was selected for master sergeant in E8. But when they select you, it's kind of like probationary time period. So
sure.
you get selected for a whole year in advance, and then over the next calendar year, they sprinkle in those promotions at the first of the month or whatever. So I was due to be promoted. So as soon as I arrived at the hospital, they told me that I was going to walk in 10 months to a year. And I already knew that I was going to be promoted in 4 to 6 months. So I made it up in my mind right then that I'm going to walk to my promotion. That was the immediate goal.
Gotcha.
But when I came from, this is kind of a fun, semi-famous story within my circle of friends. When I came from Bethesda, Maryland, where I was initially transported to San Diego, Balboa Hospital, where I was stationed in California. So when I arrived, I was met with about 20 or 30 friends at the airport, and one of those friends was getting married. My wife was in their wedding, and they were adamant right away. I was supposed to be on deployment, so I'm home early. They were adamant right away that I was going to go down the aisle in a wheelchair wearing my blues, and my wife was going to push me down the aisle. So right away, what do we think? Born on the 4th of July, right? Like spectacle, display. And I was like, oh, hell no. I am not about to be, there's no way I'm doing that. I hated being in a wheelchair. So we started right then and there pushing back against each other, and they weren't really taking no for an answer. So when I went in to see my prosthetic engineer, my orthopedic surgeon, and all these people that following week, we had a conversation. I told them what I needed to do, and I said, I have a wedding that's in about 3 weeks away, and I need to be able to walk. And they kind of gave me a look and said, well, you do the work, we'll make the legs, and let's see if we can get there. And so I'm very happy to say that was the ultimate driving force.
Wow.
So I was injured June 14th. Their wedding was August 25th, I believe, and I started walking August 14th, 2 months of the date of my injuries, and was able to successfully, tongue in cheek, walk down the aisle of the wedding, but nobody knew that I could walk except for a handful of people. So when I came down the aisle, I stole some of the bride's thunder that she begrudgingly lets me get away with today, but it is still it can still be a sore spot from time to time.
I think she, given the circumstance, it's, you kind of have to give you a little leeway there. I would imagine, right? Like, thank God you can walk, right?
You would think, but then, sometimes it is the bride's special day, right? So
yeah, you do get those brides who, but it sounds like it's a good relationship that you have with that family, and that,
sure.
that you guys are able to kind of make light of the situation, despite how serious it was, right? So, So that's where your mind was at. Was like, I'm doing this, and I'm walking to my promotion. I'm gonna definitely walk in that wedding. The hell with the wheelchair kind of thing, right? And that's like your motivation, your driving force behind it, right? Um, but I gotta imagine it wasn't just as easy as getting to the hospital, popping on some prosthetics, and let's get going, right? I gotta imagine there's some surgeries, physical therapy, that type of stuff too. How did you cope with all of that stuff and still remain so strong, mentally?
There was a lot of challenging days. I went from leading men and being around men doing very physically demanding, aggressive things, just the very nature of putting your gear on and walking to the vehicle, you know, rucks weigh whatever, weapons weigh whatever, ammo weighs whatever. You have all this, and then reconnaissance missions, whatever the case may be. There was a lot going on. To then I can't transition from a bed to a wheelchair. My first day of physical therapy was going because I've been flat on my back for about a week or 10 days, in and out of surgery every other day, in and out of surgery. To my first day of physical therapy was sitting up in bed and
Mm.
just being able to balance. And my second day of physical therapy was transitioning from a bed that could elevate up and down to my wheelchair. And I remember one of the first lessons I got, going all the way back to those initial lessons you get in boot camp and initial training and things, was my physical therapist came in and he said, okay, we're going to go down. We're going to work on this, X, Y, and Z. And, it's down the hallway down here to the PT room. So, come on, let's go. And I had transitioned to my wheelchair. I'm sitting in my wheelchair and he was standing talking to me, and he kind of turned and walked out of the room and took a couple steps, and he looked back over his shoulder and gave me a look like, come on, let's go. And I was like, oh yeah, this is on me. So the first day of physical therapy was literally the realization that I had to will myself to physical therapy,
Yeah.
and doing that, you know, will humble you. Anybody that's been in that surgery type situation, it humbles you real quick. On, okay, we're back to square one, and that, but that established a foundation of it's got to be on me, and yeah, that's what we went with.
Yeah, and so like nobody's going to do the physical therapy for you. No one's going to do the put the effort in for you. Like you're going to have to do that. And I think that was maybe an important step where the physical therapist didn't push you in the wheelchair, which very easily could have been done. Um, but it's like, no, this is your time to work. You got to get in that mindset where, yeah, now uh, you got to suck it up and you got to get some work done here. And so maybe that initial thing is just wheeling yourself out of the room and down the hall, right? Um, but without that mindset, you'd just be like, okay, well, stuff just needs to start happening to me, and you do the work for me. Move my leg, move my arms, move my everything, and that's not the way it's going to work. And so it's kind of laying the ground rules out from the beginning, like you said, in boot camp. Drill sergeants aren't going to be carrying that ruck for you. They're not doing the push-ups for you.
For
You got to
sure.
do those things yourself in order to transform yourself into, a Marine or a sailor, airman, soldier, whatever the case may be for anyone out there who's listening. You are transforming yourself into something else, and at this point, you got to go through some work too, and it's almost like basic training over again, where you gotta put some hard work in order to see the results, right?
100%.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned you had a group of people there who were supportive of you, other service members, family, things like that. Um, in what ways were they able to support you while you're home? And I believe also there's the Semper and America's Fund as well was supporting you. How did they play a role in your recovery?
So there's two parts to it, but they kind of overlap. So, um, the first part that was most important is Simplifying America's Fund, or the fund as we call it. The very first thing they did is they showed up at my bedside at in Bethesda within days of my arrival, but they were also able to get my wife there. Later on, my children were able to come see me. So my world changed, and at that kaboom moment, next thing you know, I'm on a whole new path with a new focus, filled with questions, filled with doubt, and I mean, questions are inherently going to be doubt ridden. Like, how do I do this? What's next? And this summer it'll be 18 years that I've been an amputee, and I've been associated with the Semper America's Fund for 18 years. They've been associated with me for that entire 18 years. But the very first thing they did is they had answers to questions that I didn't have, answers to questions I didn't know. Things like paying my bills, my gas, electric, what small things could they take care of to alleviate my day-to-day worries, my day-to-day struggle. And God bless the power company, electric company, all that. But they want their money on time, and my wife had to leave her job at a moment's notice to come be by my bedside. And that did two things. So they took the monetary drain off of us and took care of that, which was amazing. And then my wife coming by my bedside allowed me not to focus on distractions. I was able to focus on physical therapy, getting better. There was some vocational therapy there as well. Some things, how do I function in a wheelchair in an apartment? How do I, little things like that. How do you do this? How do you transition from a couch to a chair? I had to do that all the time to demonstrate that I could leave the hospital. In order to do that, I had to be selfish and focus on myself. And I was able to do it because they had taken so much off my plate. And that relationship with the fund continues through to, I'm very blessed to be able to speak about what they've done, not only for me, but for the 33,000 other service members of all branches of the service that they've helped. So it's been a true blessing in my life. I have stories upon stories of how they made a difference. The one story I'll tell you that's so important is I was injured June 14th. As I said, I came to San Diego on June 30th, and I had a couple weeks in the hospital before I was walking. But I had a Saturday where I wanted to go home, and I lived in a condo in Oceanside, California. And we did the normal routine. My wife came and picked me up. I transferred from the wheelchair to passenger seat of the car, drove up to my condo, took the wheelchair out of the trunk, set it up. I transitioned from my passenger seat back to the wheelchair, was 15 feet from my front door of my condo on the ground floor, and it was not wheelchair accessible.
As soon as you were talking about getting out of the car, and I was thinking, what's the next step? And I was like, he doesn't have a ramp or anything to get in the house, right?
It was just an older complex. It wasn't up to code. It had been built, refurbished, and it's something you never think about till you need it, which I'll give a public service announcement at the end. But I literally just looked at my wife. There's nothing I was going to do. So got out of the wheelchair, crawled across the little front lawn, crawled in, and made it through the front door, hopped up on the couch, and and went through that emotional roller coaster of being so close yet so far, and being there. And no exaggeration, no lie, later on that afternoon, I was called by my case manager, Sandra Saylor, who was just calling to check in. Hey, Davey, how you doing? What's going on? What, anything you need? And I said, I'm okay. You down in the hospital today? I said, no, I came home today, and I, just on the couch, and sure, everything's all right. It's like, yeah, you're not going to believe this. We don't even have a wheelchair ramp here at my place. So it was kind of tongue in cheek, joking with her, and then using existing relationships, connections, contacts, volunteers, people that said, how can we make a difference? Or they might have broke knuckles. I don't know. But I do know that the next time I came to my back home, there was a not up to code, not up to standard, wooden, but totally usable wheelchair ramp that got me from my parking spot in front of my house up into my house with no problems. So completely solved the problem and did it without my knowledge.
And that's something I think you can attest to military veterans, anybody in the service. You got a problem like that, we'll figure it out. It may not be the prettiest solution. It may not be we may not be too worried about like the legal technicalities of it, but it's gonna work,
Sure,
regardless. Sure. It'll get the job done, and that's what that was. And so next time you got home, you were able to get in the house, sure, maybe it wasn't 100% up to code, but it was functional, right?
Right. And that's I think it's so important because so much of what the fund does is done in a, we hear, I'm quoting, it's north of 33,000 service members and millions of dollars. But there's also a part where it's holistic healing and it's, leveraging volunteers and relationships and things that people want to do and locations. And the blessing for my situation, I was right outside the back door at Camp Pendleton. But I can imagine that if there was a young service member that was injured in the Midwest, not near any military base, they would have leveraged the exact same type of situation and volunteer grassroots movement to solve the problem the exact same way. And so many of the problems that they solve are done without a check ever going from them to the service members. So many of those problems are solved, as I said, with relationships and leveraging support in a holistic fashion, which I think is very important.
That is important. And knowing that there are organizations like this out there gives a little bit of peace of mind to folks who are in need of some sort of service. It's like, well, okay, it's not all on me, right? Like, because sure, you had to do the work for your physical therapy. Your wife had to do the work of being there for you, to be supportive and help you through this incredibly difficult time, right? All these things had to be happening, but there's the world doesn't stop spinning, right? Like you said, the power company needs to get paid, and the water company, all the things that need to still be done. And if there's no paychecks coming in, that's going to be awfully difficult. And so knowing that people are just going to take care of things for you to make this difficult situation a little less difficult, to put your mind at ease a little bit is I think a good peace of mind to know that these people exist, right?
When I talk to people, I think it's very important to say that the Semper Fi and America's Fund is definitely a hand up and not a handout. That's very important. And then I applaud them for the ability to solve the gamut and the unique situations that they come in contact with. My battle buddy that I was in physical therapy with, who was injured a couple weeks before me, other than being very similarly injured with amputation of both of our legs, we literally had very little in common. I was injured at almost 18 years in the Marine Corps with a wife and kids and lived local. He was injured at 18 months in service with a wife, a new wife on his first combat deployment. So we have nothing in common except the status of our injuries and how we need our different ways. So that case manager relationship of knowing that individual, knowing that family, and seeing how to solve the problem. There's not a cookie cutter, fill out this form, we'll get this done. It's a, what do you need? How do we do this type of thing? And that's what makes the fund so different than any other organization I've been around.
Yeah, that's awesome. In addition to all of this, you've taken this challenging time that you went through and turned it into a story to help inspire others. You became a uh, double amputee CrossFit trainer, and you've done all sorts of things. Tell us more about this transition from Marine Corps, the injuries to what you're doing now, and kind of what inspired you to take on this type of role.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I set out for right away. I went through challenging days, dark times where I had retired. I was away from the Marine Corps. I was away from my military family. I was a suburban dad, raising kids, doing that thing, doing that type of stuff. And I I needed an outlet, and I went to a CrossFit gym in Cheatham Hills, California. Met some great trainers, met some great coaches, pushed me back in a way that that I needed. That a drive, something to get me up and get me going, and it kind of opened the door to me. No matter what I do or what it is, I find such a huge benefit in doing something physical outside. And I can't lift as much weights as I want to anymore. I can't. There's certain things I can't do anymore. But I realized real quick that no matter what, I'm an example. Everybody will give me. I'll get a pass on anything. Let's be honest. I'm I'm a combat injured guy, and if I wanted a pass, I could get it. But there's no benefit to me. There's no benefit to my kids, and ultimately, there's no benefit to anybody else around me. Ironically, the thing that's so funny is I live such a normal life. I think I live a normal life. I travel, I go places, I do things, I meet people. It's funny almost that I'll get stopped in the grocery store because people will be like, "Oh, you're doing such a great job." Like, I appreciate your kind words, but you have no idea what I'm struggling with or how short my temper was just backing into my parking spot out in front of the store. So I realized real quick I'm an example. CrossFit is very important. I am a CrossFit trainer. I don't know. I feel like based on everything I read, I was the first double leg amputee trainer, but I know there's a couple other ones out there with different injuries. So nobody fact check me and call me out for stolen valor or anything like that. So I started coaching in 2014. So that's, we can go back and fact check records if we have to. But I just find a huge benefit in not only being physically active, some way, shape, or form every day, but also being in the class setting. And I solve most things with crass humor and dark jokes. And so it's a very, very much military-esque to be around a CrossFit class, and it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it kind of brings back that camaraderie that we all had in the military, where the guys that we serve with, and you know how we kind of joke around with each other. And
my favorite thing is when somebody complains about, "Oh, my legs are killing me. My legs are so sore. I hurt this." I just give them looks. Like, I just deadpan. Oh, really? Tell me more. What are you going through today? What's and I'll do it with no smile and true military leader fashion, and they just give me a look like, "All right, you can be a jerk. Okay, good." So
it's one of those things though, when you're trying to push yourself harder, in let's say CrossFit, or maybe you're training for a marathon or something. Whenever I've been in a situation like that, I use people like you, or the people who didn't make it home. I use those people as motivation to say, well, hell, if that person who didn't make it home, for example, they can't be here and do this, but I can. So I don't care that my legs are on fire. I don't care that my back is hurting, or that my whatever my lungs are on fire. Like, I'm just going to keep going, and until I can't go anymore. And I'm gonna do that because they can't. And so someone like yourself, who you do it in typical military leader style, which is awesome. You can serve as that inspiration. So that person, now they're sitting there complaining that their legs are hurting. Well, now they're going to get back up, and they're going to keep working, keep pushing, and keep getting better, right?
That's the hope. You hope to inspire. I like to tell people I'm a good example. Sometimes I can be a good example of a bad example, depending on what the setting is or what's going on. But like I said, I like to have fun. I travel often. I love um, activities outside, and one of the greatest opportunities I've had is something I never thought I'd enjoy that much is golf. I love to golf, and it's one of the things that is so fun. Is one of the biggest compliments I can be given by friends or associates is that they don't see me as handicapped. So
Okay.
all I have to do is do something just a little bit better than somebody I'm with, and you all of a sudden I'm not getting a pass, I'm not getting a bye, I'm not getting a stroke. It's like, okay, you know what? And that's ultimately what I look for is just to be just be taken as a normal everyday guy out there, so
Absolutely. And that's awesome because a lot of people are out there and they'll take the easier path and they'll look for that pass or uh, getting an extra stroke or two, because of what their injury happened to be, right? Which I'm sure the people that they're playing with would have no problem with that, but for someone like yourself, it's like no, that's not the standard you want to set. You want to set the bar higher, um, and you want to try to achieve what people who still have full use of their legs and all their other limbs. You want to be able to achieve everything that they can do just as well, and so and even better in some cases, right? So that to me is an inspiration too, because you're looking at someone like yourself, and man, it's so easy to just get down on yourself and be like, you know what, and the way you almost sort of did, you talked about when you're in Iraq immediately after that blast, you're just like, well, I can't see myself going on this way, but here you are, and thank God you are still here, because not only are you an inspiration, but you're also able uh, to be there for your family, for your kids, for the other people in your life, and think about all that they would have lost had that bomb been a little bit more successful on the bad guy's side.
for sure. For
So
sure.
um, so physical fitness obviously is a thing that has been helpful for you, um, and I feel like that's a thing. It's a common theme when I'm talking to other veterans, whether they're dealing with mental health issues, whether they're dealing with physical health issues, doing something physical, some sort of exercise, whether it's CrossFit, running, lifting weights, whatever the modality is for them, it seems like a physical activity is the thing that helps kind of reframe their mind, which is seems like a strange thing to say because you got to do something physical to get your mind right, but it seems like that's what has been your case, right?
Absolutely. And the more um, Father Time remains undefeated. Uh, so you have to do what you can do, function in the way you can function, and not live um, not live where you were 30 years ago. You have to adjust and things like that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing how just the simple fact of getting up and getting out of the house, I've found through different podcasts and different platforms, there's great evidence of just doing simple menial tasks, running errands, going to the store, cooking dinner, things like that. Um, Although they may not be physically challenging, they are liberating. They are enabling. You're doing something. You're self-sufficient, and there's value there not only to yourself as the veteran, but to the family around you. So I love to cook. I love to travel. I love to go places. I enjoy life, and I think that's very important. And then I've looked at different challenges that I'm like, man, that looks like something I would want to do, but do I want to do that? Can I really do that? There's a thing that keeps off on my periphery out here, that little red light, there's like cattle drives that go on in the summertime that are a week long, like city slickers. I'm like, could you do that? Davey Lind, could you be on a horse for a week? Tell me, could you experience that? And there's that part where you're like, I think I could. And then you go on a trail ride for 6 hours and you're like, I definitely don't want to do that every day for the next week. So it's one of those things you have to factor it in and see what you're really capable of.
Well, capable of too, and also desire. Like it may sound like a great idea until you get into it, and it's like, I really don't want to be doing this.
I've hurt myself with that a couple of times. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, an afternoon is one thing, but a whole week, that might be a little much, right? So
it could be that. I famously golfed 4 days in a row. And by halfway through on the third day, I was like, what in the world did I get myself into? This is a terrible idea. Why did nobody counsel me? Why did nobody suggest I can't do this? What is wrong? So,
this is what the professionals do. Come on.
Yeah, they all the time, exactly, all the time.
But again, it's important to know not only limitations as far as what can you do, what are you capable of doing, but what do you want to do, right? Because an afternoon activity, that might be fun, but if you stretch it out all week, that might become a drag. So knowing what it is that you want out of the activity, they're different things. So keeping that in mind. Based on your journey and kind of everything that you've gone through, what message would you like to relay to other service members or even veterans who are undergoing something similar, whether they've lost a limb or not? Maybe they have some other issues that they're dealing with, that's a struggle for them. What message would you have for them to help them get through this tough time that they may be going through?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'd say, and in no particular order. I would say, just like we said, in the military, you're either getting better, you're getting worse. You never stand the same. So always be looking for improvement is something that I've learned, that you can't get stagnant, especially as we get older. It's going to do more damage. So I do everything I can to stay as active as possible, even if it's just something as simple as a golf outing or, whatever. Staying active, I think, is very important. I would like to remind people that you are never, ever, ever out of the fight, that as long as you have the ability to be on this side of the ground, you are able to positively impact your day and to not give up. And there's another thing that I think is kind of funny, and it's, this too in time shall pass. So even if it's really, really great, wait, this too in time shall pass. But when things get really bad, you have to remind yourself, this too in time shall pass. So it's, I look back at different training and different challenging situations you were in, and it, they all pass. They all, you continue on. And I think it's so important to stay connected to your service members, fellow brothers and sisters, reach out to them, family, be involved, be engaged in life. And I love to remind myself, I'm an example. You go to a military base, regardless of the branch of service, you go to that town and it looks completely different than any other town that you go to where there's not a military base close. And where I live now, I have one trigger, and my trigger happens every single day. And believe it or not, I hate that I'm going to say this, the amount of people that take handicap parking spots real quick. I go from 0 to 100 because I need that spot to open my door the whole way to get out. Like, I actually need that spot. You could make it further away. It's not the walk. I need the access to spot. And it's one of those things that when I get to a handicap spot, if I can change anything by people listening to this podcast, don't put your shopping carts in the handicap spot and don't take them unless you actually need them. It sounds so simple, but it's like a litmus test in society. It's my platform, and I'm gonna develop something that makes people responsible to put their carts back in the barn and not take handicap spots. That's all I want. That's how I'm gonna change the world one day at a time.
Yeah, and that drives me nuts too. I haven't had the experience of needing a handicap spot, thank God. But the carts in the parking lot that are just left wherever, like it's not that far. They put these carousels or wherever to put the carts away. They're all over the place. Even if you have to walk back to the store to put it back there, it's not that far. You already walked there from, after buying your stuff. Come on, guys. Come on. It's seriously. But
I'm able to have this
hopefully,
conversation with a smile on my face now, but you catch me in Albertsons or Stater Brothers parking lot here later on the day, and you might get a completely different, double amputee standing in front of you with like are you serious? Come on. So
yeah, right.
it's that's the only thing.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
But I'm happy you had me on, and I can't say enough how important it is. We talked about my journey, but I really want to reiterate, I'm successful today by most standards of success. I'm married, have a dog that may have shown up in the background here. And I have all these different things that are going on. My travel, I go places, I do things, but I'm successful today because it's such a crucial time in my injury and this new chapter. I had a strong foundation that helped me build my support to let me go on to success. And there are brand new critically ill and injured service members right now it might not be a global war on terror, but we still have service members downrange today in the Middle East and Africa and other places that are coming home injured. And thankfully, the Semper America's Fund is there treating them the exact same way they treated me nearly 18 years ago. And I just really want to hammer that point home.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I do want to give another shout out to Simplify an America's Fund. Their website, thefund.org, I believe it is where you can go to find out more information about them. I'm sure you can make donations and all that kind of stuff through their website as well. But you definitely want to support that organization because like you said, they were able to help you through this, but without a handout, it was a hand up, and that's what you needed, I think, at that point in time, and like you said, so many other people that they've assisted along the way, that's what they need as well. So definitely reach out to that organization if you're in need, for similar kind of support that you were talking about earlier. If folks are looking for that, definitely reach out to the organization and consider donating as well if you're able to. That's I think a great cause, great organization to support.
It's absolutely necessary, and I don't know. Are you going to share my information? They can reach out to me.
Yeah.
I can give more stories about how they helped me and way to do that. So.
Yeah, for sure. And I have your social media links, I believe. And if not, I'll get those from you, but I'll include those in the show notes for the listeners as well. And, websites and anything like that you want to share. You could share it now, and I could also put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I'm really easy to find. It's Davey, Davey Lind, Land, on all the social media platforms. So
Excellent. So, like I said, those links will be in the show notes for the listeners. Reach out to Davey. He can help out, share more stories and that type of stuff that we, maybe weren't able to cover today, but I'm sure he'll be glad to help. Davey, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, hearing about your story. Really, like I said, it's been inspirational to hear your side of things and how you've coped and managed with this difficult situation. But you're coming out stronger every day, it seems like, and that's obviously what we want. So thank you again for taking the time to share and coming on the show.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate being on, and look forward to this one live.